Welcome to the PDA Insiders Hub, where I every week pick a topic to discuss. Usually, this is at my whim, whatever's most relevant to me at the time. Currently, I am working through our PDA in my PDA repairing the net. I'm calling it. Let's see here. I'm taking a look. Hi, Amanda. Seeing who's here, opening up the chat. Anybody that attends live can ask their questions in the chat. I'll probably save them towards the end. I do record these and then share them on my podcast, but I then cut out any kind of personal questions or personal informations that people ask here. So if you're listening to this recording and you would like to attend one of these and ask your questions to me off the air, then you can do so. Visit pda-insiders.com. And if you take a look around, you can find our PDA Insiders Hub under our coaching. So I'm the one that is here most of the time. Sometimes Sally Cat will be in the chat. So if you want to ask parenting questions in the hub and you do so in the chat space, she will oftentimes jump in there and give insight, opinions, and so on. But it is a more private space, personal, where you can access us kind of whenever. Like if we're online and you're online, then we would be there talking to you. So I think that's kind of cool. Today, I am going over more of my concept I'm calling burnout repair concept I'm calling repairing the net. I created this illustration because through the years of repairing burnout, I found it helpful to picture the rebuilding process as like knitting or tying together a safety net underneath me that is actually functional, because it felt like previous to that, I did not have a safety net that functioned for my needs. And so if you imagine a tightrope walker who doesn't have a proper safety net, they're probably not going to walk out on that tightrope. And being PDA feels like walking on a tightrope most of the time. So that's where I came up with the picture of it. And then as part of the illustration of rebuilding a net, I thought of, like a spider web and how a spider will go around and around and around. And when you're in the beginning stages of repairing a hole, for instance, so let's say there's a big gaping hole in your net and you're on one end trying to fix a spot, it can feel like you're miles away from the other side of that chasm. And the visualization of just moving from one point of contact and repair to the next, to the next, to the next, and over time, that hole will naturally start to close up on its own. And before you know it, you're not that far away from anything you want to access, which is great. And that's kind of where that's what I'm experiencing right now. And it's really surreal, honestly, considering I am a, single parent. I have a great co-parent who takes the kids some of the time, but most of the time it's me on my own and 3 PDA boys, and I'm PDA myself. So I've had to come up with some pretty effective hacks, pretty effective methods to repair. And hi, Joy. I see you as well in watching live. So again, I was just saying, if you want to drop anything in the chat at any time, feel free. I will save it for the end. And then even though I will publish this recording on my No Pressure PDA podcast, I'll be sure to always clip out anything, edit out anything that's personal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in with today, which is one of the points of contact for rebuilding this net that we need, this safety net that actually works for us as PDA people. And that is relationship. So relationship, I mean, it does get talked about. Now that PDA is more well known, I hear more about like dropping demands and the low demand lifestyle. Like you hear equalizing, like some of this terminology is more prevalent. I would say on its heels is relationship and the concept of how, it's important in low demand when you're dropping demands during burnout, that you're understanding you're not just like stepping back and throwing your hands up. And I respect and understand that it can feel like that when you're at the worst. And when your child is at the worst, that's literally probably what it feels like. And that's okay. But recognizing that there is a opportunity, even as you throw your hands up and you drop agendas or you're practicing dropping expectations, that connecting through relationship is a priority. And, that's going to look different based on the child. It's going to look different based on your circumstances, and so on and so forth, which is why, again, the hub is a great place to ask some of these questions if you have them, that have to do with your personal situation. But broadly speaking, relationship is absolutely an essential component of this. And I will explain today a little bit more of why that is. But two, before I go on, I want to clarify that when I'm talking about relationship, I'm going to break this down into three avenues. I'm not only going to be strictly speaking about relationship between a caregiver and a child, or a caregiver and or a PDA child and someone else that works with them. Like, I'm not just talking person to person. So person to person relationships is absolutely part of this. But for myself and for my kids, what I've noticed is that we also develop relationships to tasks. So we develop a relationship to tasks, we develop a relationship to ideas, and we also have our relationship to ourself that is always going on. And by breaking it up into these three categories, relationship with others, relationship to myself, and relationship to a task, it's helped me strategically troubleshoot through each one of those when I'm facing a barrier. So sometimes I would say through most of my burnout experience, the majority of the time, if I have reached a barrier, I have assumed it's a no, that it's a no for me, that I cannot access it, because of where I was at. I was at such a low point that strategizing was not great for me. It was, and seeing that too through, let's look at the worst of our burnout, where basically we're not allowed to say no for so long, or we don't have permission to kind of express our needs or collaborate or have a voice in our own life. And that burnout experience feels to me like rehealing our ability to say no again. And so for a long, long time, I allowed myself that luxury as much as possible. Can't do it all the time. There were some essentials that I had to do, like, I don't know, parenting for one. But beyond that, and for my kids too, they had some burnout too, not from like school related, which is what a lot of other families are experiencing. They didn't have that kind of burnout. They had a family trauma that burnt us out. And so looked a little different for them. But what I see from, families where their child is just like at a zero, then recognizing that not strategizing in that moment is itself a strategy, where you're saying, I respect the fact that this is where we're at. I believe it. And I'm going to validate that right now, maybe we're playing catch up in being able to say no to things or contribute in some things that might be in the gray area, but like just the ability to say no again is a rehealing in and of itself. So that's what it felt like for me. And whenever my kids face an impasse, I validate the no first. So if they want to say no, I'm like, okay, like I just let it go. Let it go. And if there's an internal voice in me that's saying things like if I say no now, that means forever. Or if I say no now, then they're going to think that they can just do and say whatever they want. And it's like, well, yeah, they can ultimately, when they grow up, they're going to get to do and say whatever they want. So if we're thinking about the long term, we're thinking about the fact that we want their permission, we want their consent to work with them and to have a voice in their life. That's what we're going for. And if we don't accept our own limitations, which is we might be able to get them to temporarily do things or mask that they like something. But if it's not coming from an authentic part of themselves, then it's going to fall apart at some point. Okay, so respecting the no to me is just respecting reality. It's not even like, oh, this is a strategy. Like to me, it is just, hey, this is real. And if I'm deluding myself into thinking that some other workaround to getting them to say yes is effective, then that's what it is. It's honestly, it's a delusion. I don't know if that feels harsh to hear, but I don't mean it in a harsh way. I'm always like very understanding with parents because I know that we have these ideas that have been given to us, and that's what we're working with. And so I don't like to guilt or shame parents any more than I like to guilt or shame kids. But I will tell things plainly, and to me this is a plainly spoken one. So that might be where you're at, is at the bare minimum and the knowest of knows. But as you are healing and, let's say, connecting with your child over shared interests, with whatever amount they will allow and make room for, um, it might be very minimal to begin with. But as that starts to grow and you can see the natural, like, give and take in the relationship grow, then this is where I'm thinking about these things like, what is our relationship to toileting? What's our relationship to bathing? What's our relationship to schoolwork or learning? Actually, let's reframe schoolwork as learning. Um, and so, first thing being relationship to stuff and things. Stuff and things like the stuff and things we want our kids to do. And I might have to check my notes a few times because I ramble, then I bring it back in. Okay. Um, I'll add to real fast a relationship lens. What do I mean by relationship? So, if I'm talking about stuff and things and I'm using the term relationship, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the bigger picture experience that person, that child has around engaging with that thing. So, let's take hygiene for starters. If you have a recent history of fighting or power struggles over hygiene, with your child, the relationship they're going to feel to hygiene is a threat response because that's what they have in mind. And what this can look like is that even when parents start to do sort of low demand things or try to change or shift their dynamic, they might not appreciate that, hey, the more immediate history or the bigger bulk of what this child has gone through has been traumatizing for them. So their relationship to that task is not good. And if the relationship to the task is not good, then here I am, if you can see this in video, then I'm holding my hands up. So like here's most of the thing, here's most of the experience that they have with it. And then at the very end, there's like this little blip of me trying here and now to make this better. So we got to keep that in perspective. It's really a perspective taking exercise where, this is most of what they see. This tiny moment that you have with them that you're engaging with right now is part of another bigger picture. So if I see that the decisions that I'm making and the strategies that I'm utilizing are about building a new relationship, then I recognize that that's something that's going to take time, that is not instantaneous. We develop relationships with people much the same way. We have our initial interaction. If we have a negative initial interaction with someone, do you think that the next time we're ready to share ourselves with them or have a deeper conversation or spend more time with them? Probably not, because our alarm bells are going off that they are not safe. And so that's what's going to be happening for a while. So until you repair that relationship with that task, and I'll give some examples hopefully to help translate this, but one example would be, so I'll use hygiene again. I made a infographic recently about how I approached hygiene with my oldest. I was very hands off for most of the time. There was a point in time earlier in where I felt pressured by my family to do certain things with it, like they should shower so often. But I felt myself, I could not I couldn't find a way. I couldn't find a way to fit them into the schedule that was being handed to me, and I made a choice to just let it go. I did still do some things to make it accessible for where they were at in the moment, and with some experimenting and with some, like, hearing other people's stories, I did things like, you know, turn the shower on for him, leave his clothes out, leave the towel out, leave the door open, ask him, what time he wanted to do it so that he could have a voice in it and contribute. When he would pick a time and then that time would pass, then we would troubleshoot again. Okay, well, can we do this or that? Can we set a timer? Is that okay? If ultimately it was a no, then I let it be a no. But sometimes, I'd say about half the time, if I took this approach of troubleshooting and collaborating with them, then he was able to do it, half of it himself, set an alarm, and then the stuff was already set up and he would just walk in and shower and walk out. And then we would have a break again. And for us, that looked like sometimes weeks. And when he got to be when puberty started for him, he also, I noticed, started to care more about doing some of these things. And on his own initiative, and with some encouraging for me, because his body odor was increasing and I knew he did care. I knew he cared. I knew he had the capacity to care. Let me put that that way, because a lot of our kids do care, but they don't have the capacity to do anything about it. So they're just angry about it. But he was in the place where he had the capacity to care and show it. So I would just say things like him. I'd be like, and I use humor a lot that's our dynamic. I use humor. So I'm like, you stank, or whisper it or whatever. I didn't want to embarrass him. And then again, try to collaborate. And I think it was like literally, it was almost like a switch got flipped. As soon as he hit the puberty mark and the smell was like, oh, this is your natural body odor now. And we had a few conversations about it and again, kind of collaborated on doing it more regularly in a way that felt like safe for him. Then he, was able to, then all of a sudden he was picking up the initiative all by himself. He no longer needs reminders, or very rarely, I'll say that. Very rarely does he need any kind of reminder from me to shower, and he's showering like every day. And he saw this, so I could say he appreciated that process for him, because then too with schoolwork or learning, not schoolwork, although schoolwork is part of it. So with learning, his learning was very unschooling, very laid back. His relationship to learning was preserved. And you know what? I'll say this real quick. So if I hadn't been going through burnout myself, there would have been a lot more fun activities I would have done to provide like opportunities to learn and natural ways to bring things up. I would have done that. I couldn't though, because I was like tapped out. So instead of forcing it and being stressed out on my end, I just mostly let it go, and I let them learn the things that they were interested in, which was great. They've learned a lot of stuff. But that to me was preserving the relationship to learning, because I didn't want them to think of learning as being something that was aggressive or stressful or hostile, because as soon as you start putting that kind of pressure on it, the brain, just shuts down. The learning isn't happening. So you've replaced learning with expectation. You've replaced engagement with checking a box, basically. So maybe they would have checked a box, but they wouldn't have learned anything. And I knew it from experience. We've heard the stories before, assuming everybody here. If you haven't heard the stories, then read the stories, because there's a lot of stories out there of how our kids might be able to temporarily check the boxes, but not actually absorb in the materials or be able to implement it later on in life. I feel like one of those people. I learned, quote unquote, things sort of going through public school, but I did not feel like it really didn't stick with me, because it was not meeting me where I was at. And I felt like I just had to push through. And a lot of that stuck to me as trauma, which then when my relationship to learning was damaged, I'll say, And so then when it was time to do homeschooling with my kids, which I was genuinely excited about, I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner, passionate about learning. I have a master's degree now, so I'm not, I'm not anti educational establishments, period. But because where I was at when I was a kid, I was not able to be met there. It made the actual learning inaccessible to me, and it didn't stick. And it also damaged how I felt about learning to my kids, because what I saw when I looked at them was that this was traumatizing to them. It was really hard for me to process along the lines of like, look, this is my trauma. I feel this way about what they're going through because of what I went through. But if I can come at this with a different perspective, like collaborating and hearing their input and pacing it along their lines and not slip into this template that I have in my mind from growing up, that's just like meet this, meet this, meet this, goal, 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 where the system is above the person, basically. The system is being served, not the individual. It was very hard for me to do school stuff with my kids at all because of that hang up I had. It triggered anxiety in me. So those are a couple ways that, that's why I frame it as relationship. I'm sure other advocates might frame it as something else. It's fine. But relationship to tasks has played out really well. In fact, earlier, I think it was a few years ago when I was creating infographics where I like illustrated my household tasks as if they had faces. And I was like therapeutic, or it was therapeutic for me to give them faces, to be like, this is what this feels like. It feels like my laundry's mad at me. Like my laundry's pissed off, and dishes are okay with me. They're fine with me. And then just like each thing, if I saw, okay, this is hostile to me, this feels hostile to me. And then I would ask the question like, why? Why does this feel hostile to me? I'm still doing that to this day. Like literally my living room is not at all what I want it to be. Not well, I'm exaggerating. So most of the time it is not what I want it to be. And so I've been asking that question of like, why? What is it about my relationship with my living room that feels like unhealthy, like an unhealthy relationship? And I'm thinking, oh, it's because I leave things in there with the hope that someday I'll do X, Y, or Z, because I don't trust that. It's like I'll hold on to things, almost kind of like a hoarder mentality. There's an emotional attachment I have to stuff. I'll hold on to things because letting it go makes me feel like I'm failing myself because I had plans for that thing. But the piles of the things is actually making me frozen in time. I cannot move forward with the piles. So I have to go backwards and like, let's get rid of the ideas and the ambitions and whatever it is that I had for this stuff and just pull it out, dump it in the trash, and start with where I'm at. And maybe I'll get to that point again where I can, put up as many pictures as I thought I was going to put up or whatever. If I can set it aside somewhere safely where it's just out of sight and I don't have to like literally throw it away or get rid of it, then I'll do that. But I've had a lot of those kinds of projects where it's like, I had this idea. I'm excited. I want to do it, but I wasn't ready for it yet. So I bought stuff that just sat around, and that was part of the frustration. It was like, this cost me $100, but when I started to put it together, I didn't have the energy to finish it. So it got left out, and then I lost some pieces, and then some parts of it got broken, and I tried to preserve what I could, and then, set it to the side, and more of it got lost. And then finally I was like, you know what? I either need to throw this away because I'm walking around it all the time and it's making me feel like there's a log jam in my mind and in my space. I either need to like put it together finally or get rid of it. So I tried to put it together. I was missing too many pieces and I threw it away. And it's just like, just facing the trauma. Like I just literally had to face the trauma in the relationship that I had with this object in my room. And that's what I need to do now for my living room space, to kind of progress and move forward and accept the fact that, you know, things did not turn out the way that I thought they were going to. I had dreams and they didn't all come true basically. Um, but I'd rather move on than to be stuck on what should have been. And maybe that sounds crazy. I don't know. If this is helpful to somebody, great, but this is what I have to do for myself. And I think a lot of PDA people, the PDA community seems to resonate really highly with having these complex relationships to things. So that is how I apply the relationship lens to things, with my kids and with myself, and how I troubleshoot along those lines. The second one is my relationship to myself. I would say with kids, their relationship to themselves is absolutely impacted, if not completely shaped, by how caregivers and people, mostly caregivers, I would say, have the most influence over how they see themselves. And so I'll speak from an adult perspective first and then apply it to a child's perspective. But as an adult, this one to me is these ideas that I have about myself, um, things that I have internalized, like, what am I capable of? What do I want to do? What are my dreams? What are my ambitions? Why do I have them? Boom. Yeah, I'm going to read that comment out loud. So Joy says, very relatable, getting stuck on what should have been. So many unrealized or undone projects. Yes. So yeah, just circling to that again, is my rule now is like, I either have a place for it where I can find it and it's organized, or it needs to go. I haven't executed that plan in all areas of my life, so there's still a lot of stuff left undone, but that has become my sort of test for things. Like, do I have a place to put this where I could find it again if I felt like I wanted to do it? If I don't, and if I can't get to that, then I need to just let it go. Or if I had like a safe storage space, but even then it's like, I don't know. So much of that can just feel like a graveyard, honestly, like a stuffed graveyard. So yeah, so talking about myself, relationship to myself. It's that just be, the narratives we tell ourselves about ourselves and like how we explain who we are to ourselves. How do I see myself and my struggles? Do I feel like when I'm struggling with a task or struggling to accomplish something, do I approach myself with curiosity and assuming the good, or do I try to badger myself into whatever it is, the thing is that I think I'm supposed to do? And here there will be, again, a common theme of putting ideas or structures or things above people. I think that's just an ongoing struggle. So there's ideas about myself, things I think I'm supposed to be doing or achieving or being. And then there's who I actually am and why I am that person. And does it mean I'm always going to be the way I am in this moment of time? It doesn't have to mean that. It can just mean that I offer myself compassion and flexibility and understanding and give myself the benefit of the doubt and give myself time to heal and to grow into something else. And I think there's this temptation to like, I mean, it makes sense. If you think about autism, we like our structures, right? We like our categories and our boxes. So I had to create a different kind of box that was a little more fluid or flexible. Instead of ice, it was water, or maybe something in between, because I don't want to be that loose. But like, but just seeing that like I am where I am right now for reasons, and maybe I can even guess them. And oftentimes what'll happen that I notice this come into play is I will have this sudden thought come to my head, like disappointment that I haven't done X, Y, or Z. Like maybe I had plans for the week and I'll think, why isn't this done? Why isn't that? And it'll just pop in my head. And my first instinct is to be upset at myself and discouraged. But then if I take a moment, I'll go, oh yeah, I felt kind of sick on Wednesday. I can, like, this literally happened. Like, I felt kind of sick on Wednesday and that slowed me down, and I took it easy because I didn't want to make my symptoms worse. And that kind of impacted me into Thursday. Felt a little bit better Friday. But what it does when I'm like more giving myself benefit of the doubt or understanding like how certain things impact me, and change my capacity. It makes me able to move on when I am ready to move on. I can move forward again when the circumstances change. So I recognize the circumstances and they don't get fixed in my mind as being permanent. And that's what, because that's what it feels like it happens. Like I see myself at my worst or my lowest, and that becomes the frozen picture of who I am and what I can do. And I think I do think this does apply to how we parent our kids. I think there's this, understandable fear that when we see our kids at their worst, that what we're seeing is just who they are. But I'm going to tell you now, every single human being on the planet has a version of their worst. So everybody has a worst. Everybody has if you pushed them to the very breaking point, what's going to come out is ugly or scary or whatever. Like that is just the truth. And we don't always all get to the bottom of the barrel. But for those of us who do, we're just seeing a part of ourselves that maybe other people haven't yet had a chance to visit. But it's still there for them. I really don't want to, and maybe going off on a tangent here, but I don't really like anybody in my life who isn't aware of the bottom of the barrel existing for everybody is not someone that I get too close to, because it's just like they can't help it but be judgmental or critical, and I can't have that in my head. So that's where this is going to transition into relationship with others. So these things all kind of end up feeding into each other. There's not like a very clear delineated line between how I treat things, how I treat myself, and how others and myself treat each other. So they do impact each other. How others treat me. So then moving to relationship to others, since these two I think are especially linked. I've noticed that how I see myself impacts my relationship with other people, but then also my relationship to other people impacts how I see myself and how I see other things. So it's been important for me as part of my healing and growth to have better boundaries around, people who are going through their own things. And if what they're going through is we're not working together to build each other up kind of experience, like we're all going to go through stuff, but if we're not like connecting in a way that's like, yes, this is hard, or yes, this sucks, or I'm having a hard time, and there's solidarity and there's connection and there's like building up, that is a very different experience than someone going through something hard and somehow pulling you down as part of it for that, like a coping mechanism. That would be an unhealthy coping mechanism that someone else goes through to pull you down. And I am talking about adults here. So let's talk about kids, because that's what a lot of people are here for. What about kids? My kid drags me down. My kid pulls on me and tries to pick on me. Yeah, okay. They do. They will. They are a child. They only have so many skills at play. They only have so much capacity. So absolutely a child can do some of the things that then pull on us as a caregiver. But that's where you think about it, that unfortunately kids can be like little mirrors to ourselves. They can be just walking expressions of the biggest insecurities of being a human being. Like they show so much. They don't have the masking. They don't have the capacity to process or the capacity to like troubleshoot why they're going through what they're going through. They're just experiencing things most of the time, and they're showing you what they're experiencing or expressing it in some very literal way that's hard to engage with. And this is where a caregiver, or usually like the primary caregiver, I can't even talk, caregiver ends up acting as that internal voice for them when we reflect things back to them, when we ask them questions, when we troubleshoot problems, when we are taking up a kind but like proactive role in their experience, that's going to start to absorb. I mean, it's amazing. I've seen it with my kids, and I'm like, in my 8-year-old who is like, throwing tablets. It was like a year and a half ago, throwing stuff all the time, and to see him now talk to himself and talk himself through struggles is like amazing. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. But I can't make a big deal out of it because his PDA would be like, stop, you know? He kind of likes little compliments, but not too many. And I feel like this is important to highlight too as part of parenting siblings. So we have, like I said, I have 3 PDA boys. So when we take this approach of safety, I do consider safety. I'm not saying anybody should be pummeled to death, like definitely doing things to help provide safety. But when we take a proactive, like troubleshooting lens and kindness and space, and we're understanding there's a process going on, it's not just the immediate moment. So when we do these things and we are reflecting them in how we treat our kids, they can start to reflect that on each other. And I feel like it's important to just throw in there real quick too. Like, I think about siblings and the question comes up a lot, like, how does my PDA child seems, my one child feels like the PDA child's getting special treatment, there's resentment. And I say, absolutely, PDA approaches can be utilized for everyone in the household, including yourself. So when you do that, when you say to, let's say, the child who is having a hard time with their siblings seemingly getting special treatment, just asking them, is there something that's pulling on you or weighing on you that you wish was different? And maybe we can work on that. Because just realizing, like, everybody's voice matters, everybody's voice counts. We can't always do everything for everybody that they want, but we can try and we can, like, give space for it. But that, again, that's another net that I picture happening, is the connection and the relationships between everybody in the household in how they treat each other. This is something that's applicable across the board. This, like, compassionate lens, and, understanding capacity varies depending on different stages of life. Like, these can be utilized into creating a network in the family that feeds in a positive way to each other and helps pull you out of the lowest of the low. And I want to reiterate too, just recognizing that not to get, I see it's an understanding temptation when there's a really bad day to kind of be like, oh, my cat's trying to get in. Okay, we ignore her. When you're having a really bad day, it's tempting to see that as like, this is proof of who we are or whatever. And there are choices that get made in the really bad days or the imperfect situations that we can't fix. Like, some things we just can't fix. We can't make them better right away. What we're doing is the best we can with what we have in the moment. I feel like, and not just I feel like, I'm going to use very strong language, very certain language here, but for sure, like, how we act in our worst days, how we process the worst of it, of things going wrong, and how we talk about it sets the stage for the next day and the next day and the next day. So it's like the most positive form of programming I feel like I've ever seen, where my kids are doing things like, someone will have a hard day, and my 8-year-old's going, oh, maybe he's tired. Maybe he's not feeling good today. Like, he's telling himself this, even as he's seeing his brother have a hard time and, like, explode at him. So I just like to throw out there that when the worst of the worst, or even if your kids are not recognizing that and they're at each other's throats, like, you stepping in and modeling this stuff and being this to them, it will sink in. It just is a matter of time. And that's why my net analogy is I wish I could come up with a better, like, acronym, but it was all I could think of I wanted to keep net, N-E-T, but I was like, what do I use for that? So I was like, necessary elements in time. And the time part is like, it's just important. It's just important to recognize that this is a time thing. There's going to be a process here. It's not all going to be good right up front, and to keep your expectations in check, because you could get unnecessarily discouraged and frustrated, or stuck in frustration, stuck in discouragement if you don't see that there is a bigger picture thing happening and that being patient and not making decisions that are just immediate fixes, but are long-term tools is awesome. And I'll throw in real quick a story. I did a book study recently with Amanda Diekman, and she was there to answer questions. And I appreciated her example she gave of bedtime routine with her kid and how she gave him so much input into how the bedtime routine was happening, even if it was some ridiculous suggestions that were not going to actually work. But she clarified that, like, even though she knew that whatever his suggestions were that he was giving in that moment were not going to help him, like watching a movie, like what is, I can't remember exactly, but he wanted to watch a movie like 3 times before bed, and that would help him go to sleep. That was his idea. I was like, probably not. But she let him try it, and then it didn't work. So then they then okay, well, what do we want to try next? Well, how about just the movie 2 times? So this. But what it did is it helped him practice, like, hey, I have a voice in this thing. I have agency here. And it also showed him and helped develop some problem solving skills of his own. Like, yeah, okay, this didn't actually work. It was a nice idea, but in reality, this thing didn't work. So instead of making in his mind, mom's the bad guy for not going along with a plan that would have worked, he can see his own choices play out. And mom was remaining supportive, but also neutral. Like, she might have even said that might not work. I don't even know. I've said that to my kids where I'm like, well, I don't think that's going to work, but we can try it. I can be wrong, which is so true. I can be wrong, and I have been wrong many times. So I like to tell, I like to throw that out there, that in that way we are equals. We try things. We might have an opinion on why they would work or not work, but still, we can still try it. And she pointed out, though, that through that process and like letting him make decisions, letting it fail might have taken months for them to go through, but by the end of it, he had a bunch of tools in his own mind that he could use to then troubleshoot himself going forward, and they haven't had issues since. So I think that's awesome. Like, it's hard and it's discouraging, and sometimes parents just hear the immediate and they're like, "Oh my gosh, are you crazy? Like, are you serious? Like, that's so unrealistic." Maybe it is, but there's bound to be something that you can, experiment with having, your child have a chance to contribute in and genuinely offer it, and just watch and see kind of how it plays out. But those are the skills that are lasting. Like, they retain them and actually, keep them, versus us just telling them what to do all the time. Okay, I can tell I'm fading, but if there's any questions about this, I'm sure I'll keep talking about it more at some point. So I will say, yeah, if there's any questions, go ahead and type them now. I'll add a last thought too about relationship with others. So one thing I had to do when I was at my lowest, and just the functioning was bad, but I could tell I just didn't have it in me to be proactive about anything, like nothing. And there were people in my life that are kind and that, maybe loved me or did love me. They did love me. But they could only be worried for me in those moments. And I understood that, but it was too hard for me to hear every time we talked. No questions. Oh, cool. All right, that's good. So they were people that my mom's very cool. She's like awesome now about all this stuff. Initially she was skeptical, so it's my mom. So initially she was more skeptical about PDA and low demand and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But she, and there was, when I was really low, that's kind of all I heard from her was her worries about where this was going, because all she could see was that I was like letting it all go and not doing anything, quote unquote. And I had to say, like, I got to take a break. I need space, which is really hard for me because I'm a people pleaser. I gotta go. I gotta take space. So I took like 3 months, I think, and I just didn't. We didn't talk. And she she actually took it pretty well. I mean, I didn't attack her with it. I just stated, like, "I need this." But if she had attacked me, I would have still done it because I needed it. I did my best to be, like, understanding and kind to her and not jump to any negative conclusions about why she was struggling the way she was. This screensaver is driving me nuts. I don't know why it doesn't just time out. Okay. It interrupted my story. So all I was gonna say is, oh, okay, Amanda has no questions. Okay, that's fine. So where was I in my mind? Even if she had given me a hard time about it, like I needed it for myself, so I framed it that way. Like I just need quiet right now in my life. I need to process things, et cetera, et cetera. And that was so good for me. Like honestly, it was really good for me because it was like again the relationship to self. What I did for myself in that moment in protecting a need that I had and not putting someone else first in a way that just didn't make sense in the situation. Like, this is my life. I'm living it out. They have their own life. Like, we can care and love each other, but we have to have some space here to make choices and to have some autonomy. So, just the fact that I did that to honor my needs and even that I did it in a kind way was so helpful and healing for me and my relationship to myself so that I was not as anxious. It's like I feel more safe in my own skin when I know that I'm willing to protect myself as needed. And, I had that it was like I lost that growing up and didn't have it. And the healing process of in each of my relationships, just really evaluating like, are we honoring each other's choices that we each might have something going on, but we respect each other's freedoms and autonomy in the things we're doing? That was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much less anxious now when I'm interacting with people because I can see, like, for one thing, if someone is really meant to be in my life, they will understand. Big picture, they will understand because that's a basic need. That I get to make choices for my life and do the best that I can. And also if they don't take it well, maybe that's a sign that they're not, they're at this point in time that they're not mentally able to be in the kind of relationship that I need or whatever. But that's my sign. I should be able to take care of myself and have that validated in my closest relationships. So makes me feel more comfortable in my own skin, makes me feel safer engaging with the public because I know my own boundaries and I can be kind about it because that's a value I have as well. I'm not someone except for recently, I did skid out of the parking lot of a McDonald's. They wouldn't take my coupon. I swear, I went there. I've gone there so often and used a certain coupon. And the guy was like, no, we don't do that anymore. And he didn't tell me until I was up at the window and I felt so flustered. And I just skidded out. So, like, I honored my boundary and was like, no, I'm not paying for this when I didn't plan for it. And you should have told me, I'm thinking you should have told me, when I placed my order, not when I show up at the window, because that's really awkward. But anyway, sometimes it does come out as like, no. And a part of me is like, oh my gosh, that's so rude or whatever. But I don't know. Recovering people pleaser here. And it's okay to sometimes things for them to be awkward in relationships because you're not the only part. You're not always the responsible party in making things not awkward or smooth. I can tell I'm about to ramble, so I'm going to close things up and I'm at the 50-minute mark. So anyway, I just appreciate Amanda and Joy for being here. And again, if you want to attend one of these events, there's a 2-week free trial through our PDA Insiders Hub. And you can access that at the website pda-insiders.com/coaching. And down at the bottom, there is a link to our hub there. Our masterclass enrollment is also open now, and it closes soon. By the time I have this published, it'll probably only be a few days left. So if anybody wants to enroll in my masterclass with Sally Cat, it's fully animated and 10-week course. You get to ask questions live with us as we go through it. It's actually pretty awesome. So I'm not just too biased in the fact that I made it with her. So anyway, all right. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you soon.